Hi, Dave Kites from the OToW Woodshop again. We've got two new to us chop saws installed just a few days ago. So here's an orientation video for you so you can learn about our new saw and the kind of controls it has, and talk a little bit about this one and the general layout for your general information. We have this bench with both saws on it, have had for years now. They're lined up with each other, elevation and front to back wise, so if you have a long board you get support from that and that. You can use either saw and let it stick out. We have this fence, these sections of fence are fastened to the bench, and they're there mostly so you can use these stops. If you take, there's a left hand one and a right hand one. If you go get a small C-clamp, you can put it on here, and now I can adjust this and make repeated cuts for whatever length I want by just clamping it on there. So it's all lined up for you. These are, if you have a piece of wood that's maybe this long and it wants to keep tipping off of the bed, you just put this here and it's lined up with the top of this so your board lays still for you. So very simple and nice. Okay. The saws will not run without the vacuum system running. Now a word about vacuum systems on chop saws. They are notoriously messy. The little catcher here doesn't catch all of the sawdust. I would estimate maybe 60%, 2/3 maybe. The rest of it comes out here and goes all over the place. So you got a cleanup job every time you use this kind of saw. The reason we don't have a good vacuum system on here is we don't have room for a big one, and they haven't got a design that I know of that works for a small one. Because there's so much motion of the saw left and right and beveled and up and down, it's very hard to design a small system that'll catch the dust. So you put a big one back here, a big hooded thing, and they're available, but we don't have room for the big hood thing, and we don't have room for the big vacuum device to create the suction to carry the sawdust away. And it has to be big. If you put a big hood there, there's no sense hooking a shop vac to it. It's not going to pull any air, enough air to make the sawdust go where we want it to. So what we have is we have hoses hooked up to these discharge ports from these scooper things, and we have this little valve system here. Assuming we're only going to run one saw at a time, you can switch this back and forth. It tells you which one is open. And underneath we have a small device, fan, dust collector they call it, to catch it. We have a cyclone in the line. It does catch sawdust. The cyclone has always got sawdust in it when we empty it at cleaning time once a week. It gets about half full during the week usually. So it does pick up a bunch, but not all of it. So don't expect too much from the dust collection system. Oh, and if you did want to use both saws at once, if you lift the little red handle out, you can open both ports at once, but you're not going to get much suction when you do that. It's marginal with just one being used. So that's what we have there. We got to improve with this. You probably noticed it's not right. There's a connector here for any size hose to this nozzle that comes with the saw, but it didn't come with the saw, so we don't have it yet. But we're going to get something so we can hook that up decent. Okay, so that's the general layout. They're both saws are slider, and this one has an articulated arm. So, okay. So they'll cut some pretty wide boards, and it depends on the thickness how wide it can be. But you'll see that when you bring your board in and try to cut it. You'll see what it'll actually do. Okay. So those are those in general. Now I want to talk more about each saw in detail and explain the controls on them, and I guess we'll get to that next. So we're going to talk now about this new saw we just bought. It's a Bosch. It's a very nice saw. It costs about $650 some, I think, or maybe a little more. But anyway, it's a good one. The controls on it, though, are somewhat different than the controls on our old Makita. And so I want to go over those in kind of detail here for the people that haven't used a Bosch before. So I guess we'll just start at the top. It is a slider, only it doesn't have slides. It's got this linkage back here, which operates very nice, very smoothly. And the up and down is very easy and smooth. And so that is an improvement over the rails that the other saws slid on. They didn't slide as easy, and they could get gummed up and stop sliding very good. This is better. This right here is one feature that we want to talk about. This thing, if you flip it down like that, I don't know if you see that, Ben, but if you flip it down like that, now the saw will not come out. It doesn't come this way anymore. It's now just a straight miter saw, or chop saw, as some people call it. Okay, so it just chops. Okay, and if we push this down and that thing comes out of there, now it'll slide all the way out. Now, for whatever reason, they build it so that it'll also lock here and hold the saw out here. So if you're changing the blade, maybe that would be helpful to have it out here where you can reach it a little easier, I guess. So that's what that guy does. Normally, of course, we'd leave him up so that the saw will slide and go back and forth like we want it to. The mitering this way of this saw is just like the other ones. It's got a lock knob here, and then underneath, with that finger, you can lift that up, and then it turns either way. And this one saw goes to 60 degrees this way and 50 some degrees that way. So it's got a wider range than the other ones do, which is a good thing. And it's got a detent there, and it's got detents at 15, 22 and a half, 30, no, I'm sorry, not 30, 31.6. That's got to do with crown molding. There's a detent at 45, and then there's the detent at 60. So they're all there mostly for carpenters cutting rafters and hip roofs and stuff like that. So, but they're there. So the miter is straightforward like that. Okay. The bevel is the adjustment that's different on this saw. The bevel is, of course, when we're tipping the blade either this way or this way, okay? So if you're going to bevel the blade, you would, over here, you can't see this one, Ben. We'll have to get a shot of this. But there's a switch-like thing over here. It's got 3 positions. It's in the normal position. It's 45 degrees, 0 to 45 degrees left. And so it means you're going to tip it this way, to the left, okay? So when you want to do that, you have to have this in the left tipping position. And this is the lever that unlocks the beveling. Not in the back here like it was on our Makitas with the left-hand thread and all that hard-to-reach stuff. It's right here. So you lift this up, and this is now in the left tilting position, so the saw will tilt to the left. So you can see, if you stand over on this side, there's an indicator back here for the angle, and that's the only one there is. So if you're going to be precise, you might want to get one of those magnetic angle devices they use mostly on the table saw to set the angle, but they would work here too. And glom that onto the blade, and then you can tell exactly what angle you have. If you just tip it all the way over, it stops at 45 degrees built in. If you pull it back, and it's heavy, but if you pull it back all the way, it goes back to 0. and then you would lock it back down. Now if you want to stop somewhere in between, like 30 degrees, you go here, and I set the pointer as close to 30 as I can. I'm not holding it up, incidentally. It stays there. And then lock down. And that's about 30 degrees. So that's tilting in that direction. If you want to go to the right, you have to lift this up, and then you can change this knob. And sometimes you have to take a little bit of the weight off of it to turn this knob. But if you do, it goes over and it stays in the left tilting position. Oops, this way. Why, the reason they have this extra knob is, for some reason, I don't really know why they had to build it that way, but they did. When you have it in the tilt to the right, the detent things over here work, and the detent things over here don't work. If we have it to the left tilt, then the detent things here work, and these don't work. So I'm not sure why they built it that way, but they did. So if I want to tilt this way, there's the 45. If I go back up here to the 30 mark and wiggle it a little bit, lock it, now I'm at 30. Okay. So that's this guy. Now, when I unlock it and I go back to 0, maybe you heard it click, the little knob pops back, so it's set for left beveling. Okay. So much for that. Now, down here is another pin, and this is the detent pin. If I pull this out and turn it, there's a cross pin in here, a roll pin in here, and in one rotated position where it is now, it's free to spring back in and pop into a detent. If I pull it out and turn it 90 degrees, now the roll pin keeps this pin from going in, so it doesn't catch any of the detents. But if I do that, and then I tilt this way, I should get to a detent. There it goes. It moved in. I don't know if you could see that or not, but I saw it move in. So now it's in the detent, and now if I lock it, I know I'm set right at that detent. Okay, so we take that out. Now you have to pull that out before you can move it. So you pull it out, you rotate it 90, and then the little roll pin that's in the shaft there stops it from slipping back into the detent. Get back to 0 and lock this back down. So that's the beveling. It is what it is. This extra switch is a feature. The third position on this switch is to the left, this way, and it says that it's for maximum bevel angle to 47 degrees. So you can exceed the 45 degree stop either way, left or right, by 2 degrees. So if you've cut something that's not quite 45 degrees and you're trying to match it, I guess that'll help you do it. So that's what it's for. But those are the 3 positions, and it snaps back to the straight up and down position, which is 45 degrees left. And the detent and all that. Okay, so that's how that works. Now, the first thing that you do when you're going to bevel is to move these out of the way. Okay, these are normally for straight cuts, not beveled cuts. You put these in close, and it keeps the little pieces from flying to the back when you cut them, which we talked about before. And that's what's there. If you tilt this now and bevel it, it'll let you do it, and the blade will hit these parts. On our saw that we took out of service just a few days ago that we're going to sell, that saw, somebody did that. I don't know, it was there for years and it never happened before, but somebody did it recently. They tilted it to the left, and there was a saw cut in this part about a ½ an inch long, and then there was a break right here. So what had happened apparently was they had some wood there, they tilted it They didn't check. They came down. It started cutting this, and when it hit the wood apparently wasn't up against the fence either, because then it snapped it into that, and it actually broke this piece right here. It didn't break it apart, but it broke it so it was dislodged back. Okay, so anyway, you have to move these out of the way. There's a little lock knob on each side, one back there, goes all the way out. Okay, and then you can lock it out there so it stays out there. Now, while I'm looking at these, you can see they got gradations on both sides here with no numbers because they're movable. So the numbers would be kind of meaningless. But if you're going to cut something over and over and don't have too many, you don't have to put a stop here anymore. You can just remember which mark it is. Of course, people are going to write on this. I know they are. They're going to make a mark there and say, that's my mark. Anyway, you can just use these marks to cut the same length pieces. On this saw, they talk about a no-hand zone, and they got a picture here of a hand with a do not sign across it, and they don't want your hand any closer to the blade than this. Not over here holding the wood. Back here. So we have the hold down. The hold down goes in a hole. There's a hole down there in the back. And now it swings around. And of course, we've had these on all the chop saws all along. And you just put your wood in there first, and then you can adjust this to hold it down. And please use them. That one, and then over here goes on the other side as well. Okay, there's only one. Okay. So those are some of the features. There's a feature here we're not going to be able to take advantage of. If you don't have a nice fence built like we do here, they have an extension here. You just move this thing would come out. But in case you're wondering what they're for, that's what they're for. We're just going to leave them locked in place here, because we have our blocks to help us hold up things. Okay. So on this side of the saw, we have a few things to look at here. This stuff here is, so when you pull the saw down, you see this goes in the hole, and the saw goes all the way down and cuts normally. Okay. It has a feature, and most of the chop saws do, is you can cut grooves with this. So if you wanted to have the blade come down just this far, so it's only going to cut that deep into your wood, and you want to use the slider mechanism and go back and forth, you can cut a groove. Now you have to cut one blade width, shift the wood a little bit, cut it again, shift and cut to get any width to your groove. The book from the saw manufacturer says the first choice for cutting grooves, as they call them in wood, dados, is a table saw with a dado blade in it, not this. This is not as precise. These chop saws, as I've told you before, are not real precise. They're not terrible, but they're not real precise. Dados need to be good. They need to be real precise. So you really don't want to cut them on here. And it takes forever anyways doing it this way. And as an aside, the router table with the right size bit in it is my choice for dados, if I can manage the wood on the router table. So for all of the small and medium stuff, I rig up some fences and things and clamps, and I end up doing it on a router table, and you get excellent results. The dado on the table saw takes extra time to set up. It's the only way to do big pieces if you don't want to do them by hand. I did some today by hand because I didn't want to set up the table saw. I clamped the boards onto the bench, and I clamped a straight edge in the right position, and I used the hand router, and I did it in half the time it would have taken me to do the table saw. But that's all on the side. Here, if you want to cut grooves, what you do is you pull this little black part over, and now that can't go through there. So you can use this to change the height that the blade stops at. See, I lowered it or I raised it. Okay, push that in, it goes back in, and everything is fine. Okay. The lock to hold the saw down is this red button here. So if you're changing the blade and you want it down, which I wouldn't, and the book says do it up, but if you ever want to lock the blade down for some reason, this is the button. It just push and pulls in and out. Okay. All right. This button here is the blade lock. If you're going to change the blade, you got to hold the blade still. So you put your pressure on it and you rotate the blade till it finds the hole, and then it pops in, and now the blade is locked. However, it springs right out. It's spring loaded. It doesn't stay in. So you have to hold this in with one hand and use the wrench on the nut with your other hand to change the blade. So spring loaded, but that's the blade lock. And up here is the switch. This switch is a little different. They all are, apparently. This big red part slides to the left or to the right. And it springs back to the center position. And when it's in the center position, it won't run. Okay? It has to be over to this side or over to this side. And then when I squeeze the other part under here, the saw will come on. So the idea is that you push it with your thumb. I like to push it this way with your thumb, and then squeeze the handle, and the saw will come on. Okay? Except we don't have it energized right now, so it doesn't come on. So that would be the motion, and that would be the action. Okay? Now, I guess maybe, I don't know, there's a left-handed person. I never saw a left-handed person using this saw. I'll bet they still do the switch with their right hand. Well, anyway, it'll work either way, right or left, and then squeeze that. That's how the switch works, and it springs back. This is the knob I was talking about before, the Bevel Positions switch, so to speak. Normally up and down, spring loaded to go to this position. It's 0 to 45 degree left bevel. If you want to bevel to the right, you have to turn this knob this way till it gets to that position. And so you turn it over like that. You lift the lock, and now I can go to the right. And the detents will work, okay? Now watch that button when I bring this back up. Boing. That's the default position. If you want to use that extra 2 degrees on one side or the other, you have to turn this lock this way. And now I can go past the 45 degree stop and get to 47 degrees one way or the other. And that's the default position. This is the lock, remember. When you get where you want to be, you push this down to keep it there on the bevel. This is that detent pin I was talking about before. I don't know if you get enough detail to see that or not, but there's the roll pin through the shaft there. When I put it in this position with the roll pin sticking up and down, it can slide in and hits the detent plate inside. If I pull it out and rotate it so that the roll pin is horizontal, there's stops here, and it won't let this pin go all the way into the detent, so it stays out. And that's the normal position. If it's in, and it's in a detent, you won't be able to move this bevel. So if you have trouble moving the bevel, this is the thing to check and see, oh, maybe this is in there in the detent yet. Okay, so that you keep that out. That's the normal position, is with the pin horizontal, so it's not engaging any detents. Okay. Right now our saw is in real nice shape. This will get damaged eventually, and hopefully, though, with the new design here, they didn't give us users a way to lower the blade too far and saw up the bottom of our saw like we always used to do, and with our old saws. So that's a bit of an improvement. The instructions for beveling, incidentally, are right here in graphic form. So that new feature, if you have some trouble remembering exactly how to do it, it's right here for you. Okay. So that's our new saw, and I didn't bring it all the way back to 0 there, and then I locked it. Now it's good. and this is locked. That's our new Bosch saw. It's I've used it, and it's very it handles very nicely. It's very easy to use. Well, I just want to make a few comments about this saw. It's just recently installed. It was donated. We had one almost like it. Actually, it was the same manufacturer, 2 years earlier model, and they changed the name because now it's Metabo, okay, instead of Hitachi. They sold or got bought out or something. Anyway, they changed. But this is like the old Hitachi saw was for 98% of it. However, the finger here, that we call it the finger, that keeps, if you can see it there, this part here, that was broken off of our old saw because somebody cut a piece of wood and they had this wide open like this, and the piece that got cut off came back with enough force that it hit this and it broke the casting right here. All this was broken, and it didn't happen once, it happened twice. And to replace this finger, you can't. You can replace this plastic part, but not this metal part. It's a casting. The casting goes all the way from here, all the way up to hold where the rails hold the saw on. Big casting. So we bought one, replaced it, and the finger got broken again. So we didn't replace that one. We left it without the finger. The finger is there to deflect the wood pieces to keep it from going up the chute here. If it goes up in here, it gets caught inside of the guard, comes around, and flies out this end with great force. And that's why we had all the holes in our plastic parts here, down here, on our other saws, because pieces had come around and shot out and broken those. And if it hits your hand, it probably would injure your hand if you happen to have your hand near there. So that's the story on that. We hope this one won't get broken, and we're going to leave it there until see what does happen with it. Okay. So this is that slot cutting business here. This is the stop for holding the saw down on this saw. It's this knob right here. Okay. The miter is the same as I showed you on the other saw. You just loosen the handle and then bring up the trigger, the release underneath there. Now on this saw, to bevel it, you have to go around to the handle in the back and remember that it's a left-hand thread. So when you try to loosen it so you can tilt the saw, you want to turn it this way so that you would think it was going to screw in this way and get tight. Well, it's not. It's going to unscrew out that way and get loose. So, it's a left-hand thread. So you go back here and you do a couple of turns on that, and then the saw is loosened up, and it will bevel to the left. When you do that, just like on all of them, you have to have this out of the way. This will go all the way back there, okay? This is like the one that got damaged on our old saw. It got cut right here and broke right here. Anyway, so then if you want to go the other direction, there's a detent pin here you have to pull out. Can you see that? Did I hide that? This detent pin right here. When you pull that one out, now it'll tilt this way, and I'm up against this thing on the other side, but it'll go all the way over to 45. You just have to take this out of the way. So then we straighten it back up, and we can push the detent back in when we find the 0 point there. And then remember, you have to tighten the handle up again, and that means you got to go around this way, and it tightens up there. So now it's locked back. Okay, so that's beveling on this guy. This guy, the switch is much simpler. It's just a trigger here, and down it goes. Okay. Now on this saw it also has a laser. There's a little gray switch in the back here, right about here. And if I turn that switch on and the power were on, you'd see the red line come out here, okay? And I'll turn that on in a second, but it makes noise. And the red line is here. But you don't know where that red line is what it's telling you. It's somewhere near where it's going to cut, but you don't know if it's the left side of the blade, the right side of the blade, or the center of the blade. So you can be off by a full blade width if you think the wrong thing. So the way to do that is we turn it on, you got your red line there, you bring the saw down, not running, and you see where it touches relative to the line. So it touches, and you can still see the line on the left side. It's set for the left side. It can be changed. And if it's in the middle, it'll be in the middle, and the abrasive on the right side. Okay, so you have to check it. You can't assume it's the middle of the cut, because it can be changed. And we rather than change it, it's easier to just leave it where it is, check where it is, and adjust your work accordingly. If it was your saw at home, you'd set it and you'd know it was always in the middle, but it's not, so you can't. So you have to check it anyway, so you might as well just leave it where it is, check it, and use it. No sense in everybody keep changing it around. Okay, so that's the laser. I'll show you it. Well, can you see it there on my hand? See the laser. If I had a piece of wood there, you would see it when you came down with the blade. And you would just check. Oh, I think. Oh, he went away. Oh, the dust chute. Well, I can tell it's on the left side of the blade this time, but the dust chute is in the way. If I lift that up, I can see enough of the line that I can tell it's on the left side. Well, that's a design flaw, isn't it? Oh well. It's only things that are different. This has the slide, of course, and it has a little knob on the slide so you can pull it out and tighten it and hold it in one position if you want to. I don't know why you would want to do that, because now you can't slide it. It's just going to cut here, and that's it. But you can stop it if you want to. It doesn't slide as easy as that guy over there moves, but it works. So that's that guy. Okay, so we've talked about the saws in some detail and showed you the general layout. Now let's make some cuts, and we'll learn some more things that we have to pay attention to when we're actually using the saw. Got this small piece of wood I'm going to start with. I'm just going to make a simple cut on it, and I'm going to hold it by hand because it's very small, and I think that this will, with a simple chop, cut all the way across here. So remember, this guy back here, we can put him in that position, and now the saw doesn't pull out. It's strictly a up and down chop saw, okay? And so when I do that and I hold my board there, I can see it's going to just make it. It's going to cut that completely. So let's just, for fun, we'll cut this like it was just a chop saw. So I let the saw blade stop before I lifted it so that it doesn't bump into my fresh cut and mess it up a little bit. And I held this only with my hand because it's a very small, light piece of wood. I didn't have any trouble doing that. Did you notice, maybe you did, when I first started the saw, it jumped like that, okay? It's going to do that every time. It's going to be even more noticeable if you're out here and you start it. and that's what you're going to do, because I'm going to show you now how to make the sliding cut when your piece is too wide. Put this way just for fun, okay? So now it won't cut it just as a chop. Missing too much. So the proper technique is to, after you have this held down good, is to pull this out and down part way, and then start it, go down, all the way down, and then push it through. If you start here, push down into the wood and start pulling this way, this blade going in this direction is now encountering fresh, new, solid wood, and it's going to want to walk on it, and it's going to pull this thing right towards you quickly. So then you're going to have to end up trying to hold it back, okay? Not good control. You don't want to do it that way. That's not the way it's done. You pull it out all the way, you start it away from the wood, push it all the way down, and then push it all the way back, and wait for it to stop, and then let it up. That's the way you do it, okay? Now, this piece is a little bigger, so I'm not going to try to hold it just by hand. I'm going to use this hold down guy. There's a hole back here that this goes in. Just drop it in there, and I can put him here or here, it doesn't matter, just somewhere. And I tighten this up. I have this up against the fence. And then I tighten this up. And now he's got a hold of it. So I really don't even have to hold that anymore. So now I can just pay attention to what I'm doing over here and just operate the saw properly. So I'm going to pull it out, down, start it, drop it all the way down, and push through, okay? So I got a little anxious and didn't wait for the saw to stop. Hardly anybody ever does. Okay, if they're using a chop saw anyway, they probably aren't real concerned about the quality of this cut surface when they get done. And so they don't mind if it gets a little scuffed up by the blade vibrating and hitting it as it comes up when it's still moving. But you saw what we did there. Now you saw some sawdust spewing out here. It's not a whole lot, but it's so much you're going to have to clean it up. We're going to have to vacuum. Every time you use this saw, you're going to have to vacuum all around here, out here. Maybe it even goes on the floor. So now here's a thicker piece. And did you notice the saw jump when I started at that time? It's a bigger jump. It's not going to jump out of your hand, but it might startle you if you didn't realize it was normal. And just so we're just mentioning that. Let's do something fun for this one. Let's miter it, okay? It's a thick, big board, and let's bring it around to what do you think? 30 degrees. So I use this, and now I'm tightening this up. It fell into the detent. Without running it. See, I'm going to cut it right there. So I'm going to try to get it right at the corner here, just for fun. Okay. Now this is a big board, big enough that I'm not going to try to hold it myself. So I'm going to put this in. The book says this needs to go in at least a ½ inch. I'm in more than that, but I'll let it go down even lower by doing that. I'm raising this up so that this can go down. There. Now I know I'm in there good. It just kind of cocks in there at an angle. It's kind of like a bench dog, you know. Well, it's just exactly like a bench dog. So, there. That's good. So that's got that. I could probably just chop it, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna do the pull and push thing for you, okay? So, there we go. Should I bevel it too? let's do the bevel just because we got an extra minute. It's getting late, but we're going to do it. First thing you do when you're going to bevel is move this out of the way. I'm going to go this way. If I was going this way, I move this one out of the way. Little red knob behind there, you loosen it up, you slide that back out of the way, okay? And then remember on this saw, this is the bevel lock, okay? I'm going to bevel to the right, so I need to change this knob to the right, the controller knob, okay? He's over there. Now I'm going to bevel this saw. I'm going to use the detent. So I take my detent pin and I turn it 90 degrees so that the roll pin is up and down. So now when I come around here, whoop, and he went 30 degrees, okay? So he's locked, but you still, I mean, he's in a detent, but you still lock it, okay? So we got the miter locked, we got the bevel locked, we're at 30 degrees. We can still pull it out, go down, and they made this slot wide enough so that this isn't, well, it's gonna, no, it's not. It's not going to touch. It comes very close, but it shouldn't touch, okay? So same technique now, because we got to push through. We're going to pull it all the way out, bring it all the way down, start it, because I'm still clear of the wood. If I had a big piece and I couldn't clear the wood, I stay up a little higher and start it before I touch the wood, get it running, then bring it down. When I'm all the way down, then I push through, okay? So, we made a compound cut. Compound because it's mitered and beveled at the same time. So it's a compound cut. But it did it nicely, and you notice I went slow through there. No need to hurry. As a matter of fact, it's bad to hurry, so just do that. Then to get your board out of the way and then put the saw back. When you leave the saw, it should be 90-degree miter and 0-degree bevel. Okay, I'll put this back here. Get my board out of the way. That's what that looks like. Cut two ways at once. I'm going to change the miter, the bevel first. Got to take the weight off before I can pull this detent pin out. Oh, come on. He's got to come. There it comes. Take the weight off, then it comes out. And then you can lift it up. It's heavy. It's heavy. Now you heard this guy pop back out. I went past the 0. And now I'll come back and hit the 0 stop here. I'm back in the right 0 place. Lock it back down. That took care of getting rid of the bevel. Then I loosen the miter. Squeeze the trigger, pop it into the detent, tighten that up again. This guy sprang back to straight up and down normal position all by himself. Now you can see the sawdust. Like I said, they're notorious. It's come out all over here. When I did that compound cut, I got some on the floor, got a bunch over here. It doesn't all go up the chute, so I have to vacuum up now. But we got the saw back straight, everything's good. That's how you do that. You put this back for the next guy. And then you're done after you sweep off.